Recording in progress.
恭请大德圣听，为此法会及一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐。殊真无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samya samputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchetoye alahadi samyao samputoshi.
无上甚深微妙法，百见闻皆能遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿觉如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand Buddha's actual meaning. 师父上人，各位师兄，大家阿弥陀佛。Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture today. My name is Heng Shi. Today is Sunday, the 29th of, it's the 29th of December. We're a couple days away from the new year, and it's Saturday night in Berkeley, California. Wherever you are around the planet, welcome. Glad you're here with us. We're going to be exploring entering the Dharma realm chapter Rupa Jepin of the Avatamsaka Sutra. I know there are folks who just take this as their spiritual connection week after week and maybe life after life. And I'm thrilled to be able to share it with you today. So let's get going. We're going to request the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to draw near. We do it with music, which is a nice way to do it. One more time. We're going to continue with our protocols for getting underway. I want to say that we respectfully acknowledge the Kombu-Meri people of the Ugambi language region as traditional storytellers and custodians of the land where our monastery is located here in the Gold Coast of Queensland. We pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. And we 恭敬地承认Ugambi语族的Kombu-Meri人，他们是我们寺院所在地的传统叙事者和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长者们致敬，并且向所有从来没有放弃主权的第一民族的原住民也致敬。Okay. Bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000界内，佛法扬万亿国中，恭训其法界和平，利益报他诺后德。Indeed. There we go. That's our protocol for getting our lecture underway. Let me see what the word is here. Okay, let's see here. All right. Now, we will be taking questions today. And our hardworking volunteers will be feeding me questions. If you're coming in via YouTube, you can certainly type in a question, and ideally the questions have to do with the Avatamsaka Sutra or Sudhana's pilgrimage. That would be the best. If you want to ask a question via Zoom, you can go ahead and do it that way too. I will be speaking English because our volunteers are happily translating on my behalf, both into Chinese and also into Vietnamese. So I get to keep my mind focused on one language, which helps, keeps me able to go deeper into ideas. Let's see here. Amitofo, okay, yes indeed. Alrighty. Let's see here. We have friends today who are joining us from here in southeastern Queensland, also in Fremont, California. Where else? Let's see. Also in, let's see here, from Shanghai, from Hong Kong, from Alameda, from Ukiah, from where else? Tianjin. Okay, excellent. Also from Shandong. Lovely. From the Bay Area. From Zhuhai. Okay, where else? Let's see here. From Guoji Gokuk are here. We've got friends joining from the state of Virginia. From Jiangxi. Okay. 欢迎欢迎 from Beijing, from Liaoning, from Shenzhen, from Dalian, oh, all over Dongbei. Okay, from Xi'an. Okay, welcome. From Beijing, from where else here? Beijing, from Anhui. Let's see here. From, I have to sit closer so my old eyes can read these tiny print. From Beijing, from Heilongjiang, Jixi, from, where else here? From Harbin, from Guangxi, from Xinjiang, 欢迎, from 哪里? Liaoning, Heilongjiang, from Luoyang, okay, wonderful, from Shandong, from Beijing, good. 东北人最多，肯定是这样子。Okay, now let's see here. We are right at that time between holidays. If you're listening in from the Western countries where Christmas and New Year's follow the lunar calendar, this is that big time of the year. And in between, there's not a lot going on. There's kind of a lull in between holidays, getting started in the new year. So what a perfect thing to do at that time, to tune in to spiritual pilgrimage of Sudhana. So glad that you're here. What is going on with Sudhana? He's, if people remember, he's looking at teacher number 4. This is our pilgrim. And he's found him on the seashore, place called Lanka. And it's interesting, the sutra specifies that he found him in the air, walking in space. So around him, admiring his ability to manifest the Arhat's 18 transformations, Lohan Shibabian, are surrounding the teacher are the Tianlong Babu, the gods and dragons, the eightfold pantheon of spiritual beings who are just like, they really show their appreciation of this teacher by making offerings to him as he does what Arhats can do and has the sun in this hand and the moon in this hand. And so they surround him and are thrilled to be able to get his instructions, to learn from him. So Sudhana sees this. Our pilgrim is like, whoa, good grief, look at this. This is my teacher. I'm so ready to ask my questions. Okay, so we spent like 2 or 3 weeks going through the eightfold pantheon of spiritual beings, including devas and dragons. And now Sudhana is about to ask, he's going to ask what he really wants to know. This is his chance to put voice to his questions and ask his teacher. And now, one thing that we've been talking about as we look into this chapter is that the Ru Fa Jie Pian, chapter 39, our chapter here, is about relationships. It's about students and teachers and students. And these relationships have to develop over time. And we get this introduction. Sudhana introduces himself to the teachers 53 times. This happens. And everybody from Manjushri to Maitreya recognize what a potential for Buddhahood this young man has. They see his obvious shangan, his good roots, his wholesome qualities, and his ability to learn from what they teach him. That's what catches them mostly. They recognize that he's a prime candidate for Buddhahood, and so they want to make available their skills to him. They want to pass on what they've got. They want to transmit their Dharma to him, and yet it's true that even though occasionally in a lifetime you meet somebody who, what do they say, 一见如故, right? You have this feeling of, the word is kismet, this feeling of deep 缘分, deep affinities, deep connections, maybe from the past, kind of a fated connection. But that's rare. It's not common. And these teachers, how could you be more public than standing in the middle of empty space while the gods and dragons surround you and applaud? This is very public. And so this teacher is used to seeing students. So somehow Sudhana has to make an impression on him. Why? Because he wants to learn, and he has to connect with the teacher so that he understands what's being said. Luckily, Shifu, Master Shenhua, came from Dongbei, came from northeast China, and spoke super standard, elegant Mandarin. So we Americans who met him in San Francisco and learned from him, were learning and immersing ourselves in Shifu's, they say what, Guanhua, the 普通话 that was clear and easy to understand. And also, because Shifu was so thoroughly trained in the Tiantai Jiaoguan, when Shifu spoke Dharma, it was full of rich 典故 stories and the 4-character phrases. Shifu taught Buddhist code, 四字成语. He taught those code terms with illustrations after and then follow up. So we got the most nutritious flow of Dharma phrases, Dharma eloquence that one could get in the 20th century and then on in the 21st century. So Shifu gave us that level of instruction, and it came to us in this pure Mandarin. So imagine if you had the finest of teachers, and here he is in empty space, bringing, he's demonstrating his 与众不同, his extraordinary qualities, but then when he talks, you don't understand him. What a shock that would be, what a disappointment. And because when I met Master Hua, I was already able to carry on a simple conversation in Chinese, so I could speak directly. But so many of my colleagues who came to Gold Mountain had to depend on translation to get to talk to Shifu. Imagine if that translation wasn't available and the best of teachers was still unable to communicate with you. What a shock that would be, right? So Sudhana is in that situation over and over and over again. He has to establish communication with his teacher. So here's what we're going to hear today is his first attempts to do that. All right? Sorry about that. We have a couple of what are called little corellas, and their method of communication is shouting and screeching. So we'll see. I don't understand them, except I get the hungry part. We're hungry. All right. Here's Sudhana's questions for his teacher. Are you ready? Okay, I'm here by myself in the Paramita house today, so we won't do the call and response. You can join me at home if you're able to read. Good chance to hear the Avatamsaka Sutra coming from your mouth to your ears. Please join me. Here we go. 十上在童子，见识时已，心生欢喜，合掌敬礼，作如是言：圣者， 我以先发阿耨多罗三藐三菩提心，二为之菩萨云何修行佛法，云何积聚佛法，云何备具佛法，云何熏习佛法，云何增长佛法，云何总摄佛法，云何究竟佛法，云何静智佛法，云何深净佛法，云何通达佛法。Okay, there it is. Here's what he asked. Squeeze it over. There we go. When the youth Sudhana saw these events, his heart grew joyous. Putting his palms together and respectfully making obeisance, he said, Venerable sage, I've already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. However, I still do not know how a bodhisattva cultivates Buddha Dharmas, how he accumulates Buddha Dharmas, how he becomes endowed with Buddha Dharmas, how he becomes saturated with Buddha Dharmas, how he increases and grows in Buddha Dharmas, how he unites and gathers in Buddha Dharmas, how he brings Buddha Dharmas to the ultimate point, how he purifies and regulates Buddha Dharmas, how he profoundly purifies Buddha Dharmas, how he understands Buddha Dharmas. Okay. Right. So that's the first set of 10. There are 10 more questions that follow. We're going to look at them all today. This is the first piece. So what preceded this was all of the Tianlong Babu gathering around the monk whose name is Shanzhu, wholesome abode, good abiding. And they're watching him manifest the 18 transformations of an arhat and his Shenzu Tong, his psychic powers, and they love it, and they praise him, and they make offerings to him. Sudhana sees this, and he gets really happy. And there's a teacher too, he's going to learn from him. So he puts his palms together. What does he do? He bows. Notice that. Respectfully make an obeisance. The Chinese is He Zhang Jing Li. He bows in respect. Respectfully bows. So that's key. This is a ritual gesture that is common in so many religions. And the idea, and it's deeply misunderstood by a lot of folks in the West. Why do you bow? Some people they just think this is absolutely not what an upright modern person does. What's the point of bowing? And what does it say about your relationship to the being you're bowing to? There's a lot in the 10 Commandments about thou shalt not have any kind of graven image. One God only above all other gods. And if you bow, what's your relationship to the thing you're bowing to? Isn't that a graven image up there on the altar? And how can that be right? So a lot of folks who are not raised in a Buddhist culture or in an Asian culture where bowing is fundamental between generations. You bow to your parents at New Year's. You bow on birthdays. You bow to elders. It's considered just proper setting up of who you are. You identify yourself in relation to those who came before you, who have more wisdom than you do, have more age than you do, someone with whom you want to establish a connection. What do? You lower your head. And what is lost when you do that? What do you lose when you do that? You lose arrogance. You lose this sense of, between me and God, there's nothing. This is the tallest thing. You set that down. And people tell me who've never bowed before, when they try it, they go, what a relief to be able to set that down. This burden of pride that I carry around when I know I don't have anything inside that makes me the highest. And to be able to bow, we at CTTB, City of 10,000 Buddhas, we have for years had these students from Humboldt State come down for a monastic encounter weekend. And generation after generation of those students who came through, we did it for years, they would say, you know, of all the things that we did here, the meditation and the eating vegetarian and all of that, the thing that I enjoyed the most was the bowing in that Buddha hall. I've never set foot in a church. My parents didn't raise me religious, but that just felt so right. When I was able to get closer to the earth and set aside this big phony self that people ask me to carry around, right? So he respectfully makes obeisance. That's the first step. Then he says, I'm going to turn off my original sound. There we go. Remind me when it's music time so I can turn that back on, but I don't want the little corellas to have their voices heard too loudly. Okay. He says what? He says, Venerable Sage, he says, I have made the resolve for Bodhi. So he heads off that, you know, that question is coming. He says, yes, I have. I've already made that resolve, but I have 10 questions that I want to know that have to do with Fo Fa. There it is right there. Fo Fa. Buddha Dharmas. These are the words right here. Buddha Dharma. Fo Fa. Second tone, third tone. Okay, Buddha Dharmas. That's what Sudhana wants to know. And notice how he specifies. He's really clear about what he wants to know regarding Buddha Dharmas. And I'm going to unpack this the way, just explain it, what makes sense to me. Sudhana has been to 3 teachers already. Manjushri started him out and said, good man, young man. He said, go south and find Zhu Shan Zhi, find good teachers. And when you find these good teachers, I want you to jie jin, gong jing, gong yang. I want you to jie jin. We would translate that early on. We would say, draw near to. Drawing near to always sounded tentative to me. It means get to know, get close to. In other words, create a relationship, student-teacher relationship, enroll in their school. That's jijing. It means all those things. It means get on their radar, let them get to know you and become put yourself in a relationship so you can receive what they have to give. That's it. Takes a lot of words to say that. Put yourself in a relationship so that you can receive what those teachers have to give. That's jijing. Number 2, gongjing, respect. Learn to respect them. So value what you get from them, and then gongyang, and then make offerings to them. So so do that to your teachers. Okay, that's a Buddha Dharma from Manjushri. Those are actually 3 Buddha Dharmas from Manjushri. So become their students, respect what they offer you, show them respect, and you do it by action, and then make offerings. Create a relationship based on your emptying out so as to be able to take in what they give. There you are. That's the first teaching from Manjushri, Bodhisattva of great wisdom. And then he sets him off on the road, and Sudhana goes to the south and keeps going south. And he does those things. So we're watching him right now in this passage do that. So he goes to 3 bhikshus. That happens to be 3 monks. The next teacher is not a monk. He goes to 3 monks. And they, after they establish this relationship, Sudhana wants to learn from them. He kind of enrolls in their school. Then they give him what they themselves cultivate, their phaba, their Dharma treasure that they cultivate, through which they got enlightened. And each one of them has a different treasure. And the first one was all about Nianpo, 21 ways to be mindful of the Buddha. More than just reciting, but reciting is part of it. Nianpo often just means recite the Buddha's name. But to become a Buddha yourself, you have to make it full time. You can't sometimes on, sometimes off. So that's Buddha recitation, being mindful. Another teacher told him about copying sutras, that what the teacher gave to the next teacher was this pile of teachings that he said, if I was going to write it down and I had a pen as pens stacked up as numerous as Mount Sumeru and ink as much as oceans of ink, I still could never finish writing, even though it would had so much material I could never finish. There's too much. Then the next teacher was the universal I, Dharma method. And he described how the kind of wisdom that gave him. And so Sudhana is what? Walking down the road, having to memorize all this stuff. He's got to take it in. Otherwise, what a waste. He meets the teacher, he gets the Dharma, and then throws it away. Doesn't absorb it. No, he is a really good student. That's why the teachers are willing to teach him. So he's got to absorb it. And look at what he says. He says, I've made the Bodhi resolve. I've met the teachers, but guess what? I don't know how you cultivate these things that I'm getting. I don't know how to gather them, all the Dharma treasures that I'm getting. I don't know how I can continue to be worthy to receive these. I don't know how the Dharma can enter my body and mind and just like incense perfuming my robe. I want the Dharma to do that. I don't know how I can let what I'm learning take root in my nature so it starts to organically generate and grow. How do I find the system, unite and gather? How do I find the thread through all of these different teachings? How do I, because the Dharmas are real, and just the best analogy is Sherpa would talk about the mind ground. How do these seeds of wisdom plant themselves in the mind ground and then grow? How do they grow to the ultimate point to where they are mature and I can harvest them? How do I purify and regulate, propagate? So taking the seeds that grow from the next generation after they fruit and flower, blossom and then harvest. How do I make sure that I've got the right understanding of everything you're teaching? How do I purify them? How do I get them to the essential point where I can pass them on? And then how do I put them in the context of the world around me, right? Understand them thoroughly. So look at these. Here's the list. All these ways of relating to methods of practice. I keep doing that, and I think I would learn not to do it again. There we go. Let's try. Okay. There we are. Okay. Sudhana has made the Bodhi resolve, and he wants to know cultivating, accumulating, becoming endowed with, saturating with, increasing and growing, uniting and gathering, bring them to fruition, then purify and regulate the next seed generation that comes from the harvest. How do you profoundly get them just right, essential, and then understand them in a bigger context? How do I relate to these methods of practice? Okay. Good for him. He's taken it on. He's really, from the young man who showed up already months ago. Manjushri's here in town, in the park. He's teaching. Everybody goes down to listen to what he's going to say. Sudhana is the head of 500 youths, and he sees Manjushri and he hears how he teaches the dragons. Remember that part? And he goes, I want to be that. I want to be the kind of Buddha that he's praising and describing. That's what I want to do. Going from that point to here, big change. He's really maturing. Now he's in the line of teaching, and he wants to be responsible to what he's getting. So all these verbs, this is somebody who is cherishing the teachings he's getting. And I want to specify that the Buddha Dharmas, the four fa that he's talking about, these are behaviors. There's actions involved. The body gets moving when you're studying four fa, Buddha Dharmas. It's not philosophical only. Okay. Now, let me take a break here. Here we are. Oh, somebody want to spotlight me? Maybe you can. I think our SysOp has to make me a spotlight. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Let's see. Here we go. Share my screen again. Okay. Now, here's the point I'd like to really make clear. There is a way of understanding our sutra that is taught traditionally in China, based on what became known as the Avatamsaka school. And it had a name. It was called the Xianshou Zong, different from the Tiantai Zong. Take a step back from this. When we talk about Hanchuan Fojiao, which is our school, Chinese Mahayana, there are these 5 divisions that come up pretty quickly when you talk about it. That makes it unique. 5 divisions, people know the Chan school. Redwood Vihara, city of 10,000 Buddhas, and other monasteries in our system are doing Chan retreats right now, meditating. That's the Chan zone. That's one. Pure Land is what people do. We just finished an Amitabha session. Recite the Buddha's name, such devotion. If it was yoga, Chan is Raja Yoga. Pure Land is Bhakti Yoga, devotion. What else is there? There's the Vinaya school. Our pilgrim, Master Empty Cloud, whose picture you see on my screen here, in his picture biographies lecture series, he's at Baohuashan, Longchang Si. Baohuashan is in Jiangsu province. And let's see, did I say that right? No, it's in, it is in, yeah. So this monastery, Longchang Si, is known as the Zuting, the ancestral home of the Vinaya school, the Vinaya school. So that's where you go. If you get your precepts at Baohuashan, Longchang Si, if you're Jiedie, your precept ordination certificate shows that that's where you got your ordination. You everybody goes, oh, you are considered to be you got the finest quality of precepts from your masters. That's traditionally the way it went. And Master Empty Cloud is walking there in his picture biography. So that is the Lü Zong Zu Ting, Bao Hua Shan. What else? There is the Mi Zong. So we got Chan, Pure Land, Vinaya. There's the secret school, right? Which is the mantra yana, sounds of power, also the mudras and the tankas. That all is part of the Mi Zong, the esoteric school. Then there's one more. And that's the one we're practicing today by looking into the Avatamsaka Sutra. It's called the Jiaozong, words the Buddha spoke, how the Buddha taught the Dharma for 49 years and all the 300 different assemblies where he spoke. Now, that Jiaozong is made up primarily of two different interpretations of the Buddha's teaching. Let me explain that and hang with me. Do we need a little bit of palate cleansing?
Reverend, turn on the original sound.
There it is. Want to join me? Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Namo Guan Shi Yin Pusa. That's called a palate cleanser to kind of activate the right brain so my voice doesn't become a blur. Okay, we're back talking about Hanchuan Fojiao. What do we study? What do we learn when we come to this tradition? We learn what are called the Wuzong, the five schools: Chan, Pure Land, Vinaya, secret school, esoteric school, Mizong, and then the teaching school. And boy, when I was studying Riben Chan, when I was studying Japanese Zen, I had no idea that the teaching school existed. The Buddha spoke. We know what the Buddha said. Wow, where is that? Well, in China, after centuries and centuries of looking to India and thinking how Pali and Sanskrit had the original teachings of the Buddha, and that was it. You had to go there to find it. Buddhism had been in China now for centuries and centuries, and the Chinese had their own view of how the Dharma could be organized and absorbed and learned and then cultivated. That view got systematized, got put into a system by Master, in particular, Master Zhi at Tiantaishan, and his way of cultivation became known as the Tiantai Jiaoguan, and he wrote it down in things like the Moha Zhiguan and other texts like that. So that became kind of the backbone of how the Chinese, from the 6th century on, 7th century on, organized and understood the Jiaozong, the teaching school. There was, however, one more school, one more way of approaching the Buddha Dharma, and that was the Shen Shou Zong. And those teachings came about largely because of the line of ancestral teachers that came down from the 3rd generation teacher, Fa Zhang, on to the fourth generation, Master Chengguan, also known as Qingliang Guoshi, National Master Clear and Cool, and then on to Zongmi, Changshi, the fifth one. And at that point, historically, at the time of the Tang, the teachings sort of came to an end because of geopolitical rebellions, reactions against Buddhism, and Chinese emperors who destroyed the Dharma, etc. So, okay, the Tiantai focused on the Lotus Sutra largely. The Xianshou school focused on the Avatamsaka. Okay, still with me here? So that's the fifth school, the teaching school. Here's what I want to get to. The Xianshou Avatamsaka school, based on the interpretations of the great Tang masters, by and large took the Avatamsaka towards philosophical views of the Dharma. And that's there. It's profound, it's wonderful, it's deeply spiritual, and because of the language that those teachings were set in, people who didn't have that quality of language often got left behind. So the Xianshou, the Avatamsaka school, was never, quote, popular because it appealed to a level of purity and pure logic. So it's hard to follow without deep foundation. As a result, many people said, oh, the Avatamsaka can't be explained because it's the peak of philosophy, it's too abstract. And they didn't go close to it. Supporting that view was this cultural habit which said we can only understand the Buddha's words by going through the commentaries of the great masters of the past. So if you touch those commentaries and they were too lofty, people would figure, oh, the sutra's closed. Master Shenhua came along to America and said, we are going to investigate the Avatamsaka Sutra every single night until we're done. It took him 9 years. And he began in 1972 with a direct, the word is peon, with a direct homage to Master Chengguan. The first thing that Shifu explained in the Avatamsaka was what's called the Xuantan, the appended commentary to his Master Chengguan's massive commentary, the Huayan Sucha. So there's a preface to it, and that's what Shifu explained first. But after he thoroughly explained that, he set it to one side and said, from now on, you're going to hear the Buddha's voice, he said, every night for 90 minutes. I deeply respect the commentaries. I look at them during the day, get my mind on the passage, but then I lecture from the nature. And I lecture without depending on the commentaries. Now, people have heard me say that before, and you go, yeah, we know that, Dharma Master, so what? Well, here's so what. By Shifu doing that, he gave the Avatamsaka back to the world. If you touch Shifu's commentary, and we've been translating it busily for all these years, 33 decades and longer, what you discover is a practice-centered, a Buddha Dharma cultivator's approach to the Avatamsaka Sutra, just like Sudhana's questions today. Sudhana says what? He says, How do you cultivate the Dharma? How do you accumulate these teachings? Because I've been hearing a lot of them. How do I put them inside so I'm endowed with them? The cultivation comes from inside instead of only from outside. How do I make every thought saturated with Buddha Dharma? How do I increase and grow in my ability to deal with these methods of acting, speaking, and thinking? How do I gather them into a system that I can absorb so I don't lose any of them? How do I bring them to perfection? How do I regulate them in my nature so I'm never apart from them? Summer, fall, winter, spring, day and night. How do I get them to the essential point so I can command them and I really know what I'm talking about? How do I understand them ultimately? So here is Sudhana saying, yeah, I want to practice these teachings. I don't want to merely put them into a system that appeals to my left brain. I need to eat, sleep, walk, think, cultivate the Buddha Dharma. Practice-centered approach instead of system-centered approach. Any people know process philosophy, Whitehead, Alfred North Whitehead. That's the Shensho Zong. It's looking at theory of mind instead of theory of liberation from suffering, transformation. So that is what Shifu gave us. And it's a whole new day in Avatamsaka studies. That's why this is so important. The practice-centered approach says bow to the Avatamsaka Sutra, praise the Avatamsaka Sutra, make offerings to the Avatamsaka Sutra, follow Samantabhadra and repent using the methods of the Avatamsaka Sutra, rejoice in others' cultivation of the Avatamsaka Sutra, ask the Buddha to speak the Avatamsaka Sutra, request the Buddha to stick around until we understand it, till it's really ours, devote ourselves in study, accord with beings' different abilities to understand, and then dedicate merit like an Avatamsaka Bodhisattva. So Samantabhadra's 10 practices and vows, a perfect example of how Shifu gave us the Avatamsaka, right? People familiar with Samantabhadra's 10 practices and vows? Let's do it for once. Here's Sudhana's question. He says, I want to know, made the Bodhi resolve, I want to know what I do with what people are giving me, what the teachers are giving me. How do I approach and relate to these dharmas? What are the dharmas that Shifu wants to know about? I'm going to make this really big. Bowing. Let's put that, there we go. Bowing, praising, offering to, repenting, renewing, with. Okay, take a look. These are the first 4 Buddha Dharmas that Samantabhadra says will carry us. Well, this is Samantabhadra's 10 practices are the final answer to Sudhana's question that he asks 53 times. Samantabhadra is the 53rd teacher, and he concludes Sudhana's pilgrimage by saying, oh, you want to know how to cultivate? I'll tell you. First, bow. Next, so when you bow, you have a new relationship. You're in line to learn from the teacher, the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, whom you're bowing to. Then praise them, and when you bow, what happens? You humble yourself. When you praise, you take yourself out of the center, right? There are internal reactions to these practices. I think that's really key. It's these 10, Samantabhadra's 10 practices and vows have a quality of transforming the ego, the self. When you bow, you humble it. When you praise, you take you off the center. You're praising someone else. When you make offerings too, you're saying, I am full of these things that are mine, and by reducing my share and handing them to you, I'm making room in myself, within myself, for what you could teach me. When you repent, it's another, or renew, it's another way of emptying out. You're emptying out error, mistakes that you made, so that you can do it again better, improved and renewed. Okay, these Samantabhadra's 10 practices and vows, these are the personal ones. You do this. I do this myself. I bow, praise, I make offerings, I renew. I do that without having any support around me. I can do that solitarily, personally. The next 4 are actually social. You rejoice in others' merit and virtue. I'm going to turn off my original sound again. You have to tell me again, Cliff, when I get it wrong. Why? We've got baby birds outside who are so noisy. These are the currawongs who come. And Mom is trying her best. The babies are so hungry. So, okay, these 4 are personal. The next 4 you do. You rejoice in others' merit and virtue. You joyfully support them. You ask the Buddha to turn the Dharma wheel, or the teacher. You ask the Buddha to stay in the world. You diligently learn from the Buddha. Those are social. The last 2 of Samantabhadra's 10 vows are universal. You accord with all living beings, and then you dedicate merit throughout. So these 10 vows, when you break them down that way, it's so interesting because you've got personal, social, and universal. Oh, that's approachable. So Sudhana says, how do I cultivate them, et cetera, et cetera? This is how. You analyze them. You work with them. You watch them grow. Buddha Dharmas are techniques and methods of service, methods of change. You become a different person when you cultivate. You transform because you actually have to go and do it. You have to take your time to learn how to bow and to lower your body to the ground. You praise because you genuinely feel it in your heart that you want to let that being know how you admire and want to become like them. Further, what else? You make offerings. Well, we just saw the gods and the dragons in the Eightfold Pantheon making their offerings to this teacher, to Shanzhu, the monk whose name is Wholesome Abode, good dwelling. So, right, you get it? This is all practice. Practices in the sense of when you say, I want to practice, meaning I'll practice my layups, practice my foul shot, practice my jump shot if you're a basketball player, practice my serve if I'm a tennis player, practice piano if you're learning piano. So that's all practice. But what this means is you spend your time engaged in these activities that the Buddha taught. That's why they're Buddha Dharmas. These are methods that if I engage in them, things change. I'm gonna, let's say, learn to recite the Great Compassion Mantra, 84 verses. Can do it in 90 seconds if I go at a standard pace. Namo Halladano Dola Ye. But these phrases are kind of nonsense phrases. They don't, what is Namo Halladano Dola Ye? Sounds like baby talk. It's Buddha talk. And it's profound if you can absorb these sounds and then recite them, because they're mantras. These are sounds of power. That's practice. Okay, so practice-centered approach to the Avatamsaka Sutra. The word, here's a new word for you, hermeneutic. Hermeneutic means, it's an academic word meaning how you approach, the lens that you look at Buddhism and your life and the world through. You look at Buddhism and your life and the world through the lens of practice, meaning these behaviors that really change, that change you and change your perspective, change your relationship. So that's the Avatamsaka Sutra. It is philosophical in parts, but look, Sudhana is like standing on the seashore, looking up in the air at a teacher who's like flying through the air. And he says, yeah, I made the Bodhi resolve, but what do I do? How do I approach what I'm learning? I don't want to lose it. I want to make the most of my opportunity to draw near these teachers and to learn from them. So please answer, if you will, kindly. All right, got that? Okay, put that aside for now. Let's see here. All righty, let's see here. Let's see here，请问作为一名在家佛弟子，如何在这么多元开启的社会学习，效仿善财童子53参，如何办认识知识、认善知识 ？Okay, so good question. All right, I want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. These are excellent questions. Be right with you. Ah, I'm spotlit, aren't I? That's what I asked for. There we go. Let's see. Give me a second. Right. Okay. So the question is, this is in this era where the world is so diverse, we are drowning in data. We're drowning in input, with our phones being so powerful, phones being tiny computers. The average phone has more computing power than any of the early space capsules that orbited the moon. In a time like that, how do we actually cultivate like Sudhana, and how do we recognize good teachers? I'll take that second part first. So how do we recognize a good teacher? You all familiar with Master Shenhua's 6 guidelines, 6大宗旨. So there was a time in Los Angeles, it was 1983, 82, when there was a teacher coming around whose name was Lu Shengyan. And I don't hesitate, you can translate that. You don't have to mute that. I get muted by my wiser translators who know when not to translate something. So this teacher named Lu Shengyan came through. I was cultivating at Gold Wheel, the pilgrimage was over. And this guy came into town, and we had some lay people who came to talk to us about and told us what was going on in town. They said, you know, in Chinatown and downtown, there was not a single hotel room available because so many people came from far and wide to attend Lu Shengyan's Dharma assembly that they rented all the hotel rooms. And he said, I went just out of curiosity. And do you know what he did? He said, I'm going to teach you the money god Dharma, the Cai Shen Fa. So he said he rented out this Lowe's Valentine movie theater in downtown Hollywood. And of course, the place was packed, and there was no parking spots near and far. You couldn't get in the door. It was just Ren Shan Ren Hai, oceans of people. He had monk disciples dressed in the Wu Fo Ding, the hats that you wear when you do the Yanko, the flaming mouth ceremony, wearing a red robe. So there was so much incense in the air that you couldn't see in front of your face. And then they were beating on the wooden fish, dunka, 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 dunka. And then in came Lu Shengyan. People were now just so excited, so thrilled. And he said, here's what you do. I'm going to transmit the Cai Shen Fa to you. Now, he said, I want you to come up, and don't come up with $1 bills. Don't come up with $10 bills. You come up with a $50 bill or a $100 bill or more, and you put that down on the altar. Slapped his hand, slapped right down here in front of that Cai Shen. And he said, if you have affinities with the Cai Shen, your $50 bill will become $500. Your $100 bill will become $1,000. Do you believe? You have to believe deeply, and you guaranteed that if you have affinities with the Cai Shen, said your money will multiply right before your eyes. Who's first? Let's go. Let's get down. The disciple said, people lined up. They lined up to slap their money on the altar, and the incense is fuming up, and the wooden fish is pounding, dong, boom, boom, dong, boom, boom. People came up, they slapped it down, and the money disappeared. Lu Shengyan said, oh, you don't have enough faith. Next. All right, who's next? Slap it down. 1 out of 100. The money miraculously multiplied on the altar, and that person's thrilled and just bowed down. Everyone's excited, and the lines grow as people. Who was the Cai Shen? It was Lu Shengyan, who was pocketing all the dollar bills and $50 bills and the $100 bills. And he was the money god. And the disciple said, I was embarrassed for all of my colleagues in the corporation who would just, the chance to gamble and win. He said, it was just like Las Vegas, putting money in the slot machine, that people loved to be cheated by the money god. He said, I couldn't stand it. The fact that this had anything to do with Buddhism, he said, was just, I had to leave because I couldn't stand it. Guaranteed, this is not a shanzhi. This is not a good and wise advisor. So I witnessed this. I heard the story, and I saw all the excitement in Los Angeles when, for the very first time, Lu Shengyan came to town. And this same clown, this huckster, this snake oil salesman, traveled to Honolulu, traveled to San Diego, traveled to Denver, and wherever he went in the Chinese Buddhist world, in the Chinese non-Buddhist world, people would draw near to be cheated by him. So I told that story to Shifu about Lu Shengyan. He says, yeah. He said, yeah, Lu Shengyan becomes the money god, and he's cheating people because of what? Their greed. So the 6 guidelines are how you tell a good and wise advisor. Is the person greedy? For what? For wealth, for sex, for power, for fame? Does he, wherever you go, do you see his picture everywhere? Does his picture appear on the catalog or the program? And on every page, is it incorporated in the logo? Believe it or not, there are teachers who absolutely do that. They brand their face everywhere. If you see that, you can know that what's the conclusion, and how do you tell, is this a good advisor or not? It's because self is a source of affliction. The big me in the middle is a reason for affliction to grow. That's Buddha, by transforming the self, put an end to affliction. So if there is greed for face and fame and reputation, that's a source of affliction. How can this person teach you to be free from affliction? All right, that's one. Does the teacher constantly yi ren yang ji, right, suppress others as a way of promoting themselves? If a large part of their teaching has to do with being number one, the best in every situation, does the person ever praise others or find anything wholesome in wisdom that doesn't come from his or her mouth? Then chances are that's going to increase affliction when you draw near them. So you might want to slow down or look critically at the things they say and teach. So bit by bit by bit, you use the 6 guidelines. Do you find fighting there? Is there competitive energy? If so, you're not going to be able to learn something that will help you subdue your own afflictions. What do they say? Fighting is the attitude of win and loss. It stands in opposition to the Tao. 争是胜负心与道相违背，变生四象心由和得三昧. Fighting also creates self and others' rights and wrongs. Where is samadhi going to come from, right? So that's one really helpful way to tell if a teacher is going to help you. The teacher who you want to get close to is the one who teaches you Buddha Dharma, who models these methods of cultivation that have been in the world for thousands of years, but not owned by anybody. Buddha Dharma is public domain. It is Creative Commons license, right? Nobody owns it. And if you have to, there was, when I was a graduate student, there was a guy called Guru Maharaji. He was a young boy. He was not yet pubescent. He was in his 30s, he was 12 or 13. And his mother pushed him, promoted him strongly. And I remember passing through Denver and going through looking for teachers. And I had been to my teacher in poetry, Yu Guangzhong. I was in at Temple Buell College in Denver. And in Denver at the time, wow, Guru Maharaji was a big deal. Lots and lots of young hippies were studying Guru Maharaji. And he was promoted by many people as being a true good and wise advisor. So over time, his reputation became, people took a hard look at what he was actually teaching. And an expose was done. They did a documentary, was done by someone whose sister got pulled in by the cult of Guru Maharaji. And was harmed. So the brother took his camera and his videography skills and did an expose. Guru Maharaji at the time rented out the Astrodome down in, was it Dallas or Houston, where the Astrodome? He had so much wealth and power and money that he rented out the Astrodome and gathered his followers in there. And the guy who was doing the filming was able to hide the camera and get into the inner sanctum where Guru Maharaji was going to teach the true secrets. $10,000 per head to get into the inner sanctum where he would finally give you the actual ultimate teaching. So I watched this documentary that was exposing this guy. So he's a 13-year-old kid, and you go into the inner room and he's there wearing dark glasses in a dark room. And he says, all right, all of you kneel. So we have everybody kneel. And he says, I will teach you how to see the light, to see the light. And he took off his dark glasses and he says, take your fingers, press them into your eyes. Press. Are you pressing? Press into your eyes. Let them go. You see the light. He said, on the camera, he said, I will now teach you to hear the sound, the sacred sound. He said, take your thumbs, both thumbs, press them in your ears. Are you pressing? Press, press, press in your ears. Let them go. Can you hear the sound? And he said, I will teach you to taste the nectar. He says, take your little fingers like this, press against your tongue, press, press. Are you pressing? Press back. Let them go. Taste the nectar. Next group. That's all, out. So this 13-year-old kid was cheating people out of $10,000 each. That was it. That was what you got. And he also, in order to become his disciple, you had to give him your home appliances, your blenders and the toasters and toaster ovens. That's what he wanted from people. And he had so much money from bilking people that he had houses full in Beverly Hills and Aspen, and full of people's electronic and kitchen appliances. Finally, on an airplane traveling through Europe, he fell in love with a Swedish air hostess and wanted to marry her. And his mother, because it was witnessed and the press got a hold of this, they said, what kind of a guru is making passes at Swedish air hostesses, airline attendants? Mother said, he is no longer the god, it's his brother is actually the god. And so she promoted Guru Maharaji's brother as the real god. So, okay, you get the point. This was the rise and fall of something less than a sacred being, but he was promoted. And in America, we have no experience. We're such a new country that people believed the PR. So the question was, how do we, in a world with so much stimulus and input, how do we become like Sudhana and tell who is a true, good, and wise advisor and make a relationship with him and learn from him or her? And Master Hua's answer was, use wisdom, look carefully, and compare the behavior, the words, and the thinking of a teacher with the 6 guidelines. Is he fighting? Is he greedy for fame? Is he greedy for power over others? Is he greedy for wealth or your household appliances? Is he seeking? Is he seeking to become number one? Is he selfish? Is he take all the benefits for himself? And is he telling the truth? And you have to decide, you trust your own wisdom, but that's very helpful to have those standards by which you compare behavior. And so now, sometimes the teacher or the person you're looking at through that lens, the answer is no, he is not fighting, greedy, seeking, selfishness, self-benefiting, unwilling to share, and he's not lying. In that case, the things the teacher offers to you may help you transform yourself. If you see that the teacher is, in fact, fighting and greedy, etc., then the answer is that person's own afflictions are not done. He's still bound by affliction. He's still going to have bad days and a big self. How is that person going to be able to show you something that you can benefit from in transforming yourself? Because as you see, take a look. Sudhana, once his Shanjishi answers these questions, what happens next? Sudhana has to go and do it himself. He has to put these into practice. So even if you have the very, very best teacher and he offers you these tremendous answers, you still have to go and do it. That's why this is called a practice-centered approach to the Avatamsaka Sutra, right? It's not a philosophical hermeneutic, a philosophical lens. You have to actually go and do it. That's why it's called a practice. You have to put it into practice. All right? Okay. There we go. Let's see here. GCDR is sending me, the translated Google Doc. Nice. Okay. Yeah, you bet. 请问, okay. Okay. The question is, what about that one called, the question called not seeking? Okay. So here's Patrice. Patrice asks good questions endlessly. Got an inquiring mind. That's what it comes from being a Scorpio, I understand. So, okay, why is it called the Avatamsaka school? Is that the only sutra that the Avatamsaka school studies? It's, again, we're in what's called by listening to a lecture on Buddhism, you are engaged in the teaching school, or the academic school, the school of teachings, instead of the Chan school or the Pure Land school. So that's to say, the teaching school focuses on what the Buddha taught, words the Buddha spoke, all right? Largely, by and large, history records two major divisions of the teaching school. One is the Tentai, one is the Shensho. Tentai, in Japan, is called Tendai, uses the Lotus Sutra as the primary teaching text. It's vast. The Lotus Sutra is huge. It has its own approach to Buddhahood. The Avatamsaka school is the focus of the Shensho, the Avatamsaka teachings, because it takes the universe of the Avatamsaka as the field of teachings, the Bodhisattva path, right? There isn't a Shurangama school, although the Shurangama Sutra largely talks about meditation. So the Chan school loves the Shurangama Sutra. So in the Mahayana, we have these rich, deep texts that can, there's so much in them that you can actually fit all 5 schools into one sutra. But your question, Patrice, is why did the Avatamsaka school get named that? It's just because the teachers, I guess you could say largely because of the writings that the founders of the schools left behind. Master Jirja left behind the Moha Zhiguan, the Great Calming and Contemplating, it's massive commentary. And Master Fazang and Master Chengguan left behind massive commentaries to the Avatamsaka. So it's the presence of those written legacies, the books they left behind, that said, oh, here's the Avatamsaka school based on these commentaries. So, what school are you going to found, Patrice? It's going to be the Capoeira school or the drama school of the Buddhist interpretation, you tell me. You focus and leave it behind, and then we'll follow. All right. Last one. Question was about, here we go. Question was about seeking. Okay. Why? Oh, so many good questions. Wow, E. Okay, yeah. So somebody in Xinjiang, I won't mention the name, wants to learn about meditation. That's great. Meditation is a practice. If you can, there's so many ways to meditate. Right. I don't want to launch into meditation instructions because to do it justice, to do it thoroughly would take more time than we have. But there are many, many, many. One good place to start, if you want to really start in meditation, go to BuddhistTexts.org, O-R-G, find a copy of Chan Kaishi, Master Hsuanhua's Pure Chan and Pure Land Dharma talks. Shifu teaches all about meditation. These are talks that were given during a Chan session. So that's a really good place to start. Okay. Yeah, lots of good questions. Someone asked about how do you explain no seeking? And some people are critical and saying, isn't the Bodhisattva seeking when he says living beings are infinite? I'm still going to teach them all. Aren't you seeking to teach living beings? Seeking is given as an antidote to discontent. You know what they say, 知足常乐. If you know how to be content, you'll always be happy. 知足常乐，能忍自安. So, 不求, when Shifu says, don't seek, what he's saying is learn to be content and you'll always be happy. You won't be afflicted. Seeking. Now, are you married? The person who's asking that question. If so, are you married for 7 years? Are you married for 8 years? There's the famous 7-year itch, they say, which is that in marriage partnership relationships, often there's biological changes that happen after living together with another person that long. It takes a recycling of your priorities and your values. You have to renew your vows to get through that change, the 7-year itch. That's why it's known as a thing, right? So if you can, at that point, look at your partner, your husband, your wife, your partner, and say, I am so grateful that you put up with me. I am so grateful that you are willing to stick with me with all of my habits and faults and selfishness. It is my great honor to continue a renewed relationship. It may not be as it was when we were first courting, when we were first, in love, but it's richer and deeper, and it is based on service and gratitude. That's not seeking. 知足. You have to do that often. And what do most people do? Oh, I'm tired of you. I want to get somebody new. You throw over the rich, deep, joyful relationship that you have with another human being in search of something fresh and shallow and fated to be unsuccessful, right? That's such a sad story. So anyway, that's the idea of 不求 has to do with learning to be content with what your blessings and your karma brings you. So if you can get through that gate, you're good for 30, 40 years of happiness in a partnership. So that's an example. Seeking is shallow and it often leads to major affliction. Okay, there we go. We'll continue. Those questions, we are recording all of them and we're going to be answering them as we have time. All right, your questions will be answered. Let's practice that 10th Buddha Dharma. I know where I'm going to dedicate merit. Where are you going to dedicate merit? Oops. There we go. Every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. I'd like to invite you to bow to the Buddhas with me. Here we go. Yi Wen Xun, Sai Wen Xun, San Wen Xun. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. See you all next week for more on the practice-centered interpretation of the Avatamsaka Sutra. A new day for this sutra that we love. Amitofo. See you then, friends. See you next week. Happy New Year, everybody. 新年快乐. Amitofo. Bye-bye now.
Recording stopped.